This podcast show is brought to you by Northern Bee Books, publishers of new and second-hand bee books. Founded in 1976, Northern Bee Books claim to stock the largest collection of new and old bee books in the English-speaking world. They also publish the Beekeepers Quarterly and Natural Bee Husbandry magazines. Visit northernbeebooks.co.uk to view their book list. Welcome to the Kiwimana Bay. Gosh, this is episode 146 of our beekeeping show, and be aware, it's almost spring.
We are Gary
and Margaret.
We are Kiwimana, and Kiwimana are beekeepers from the hills of the Waitaki Ranges on the wild west coast of Auckland in the North Island of New Zealand.
Yes, we build and sell beekeeping equipment and bees, provide beekeeper services and education.
And it's Bee Month in New Zealand. In this episode, we talk about mass bee deaths in Russia and is live and let die the way to save the bees? The Apriast in Scotland doesn't think so. And the show notes for this podcast are kiwi.bz/146.
September is Be Aware Month, guys, and it's a month fully dedicated to celebrating honeybees.
Yes, Apiculture New Zealand has been running Be Aware Month for 9 years, and it gets bigger and better every year. And we have Charlotte, who is a communication coordinator from Apiculture New Zealand, on the line. Yes, so Charlotte, what's planned this year for Bee Month?
So we've got quite a few things planned. Some of the big things are we have an annual schools competition during the month. We're asking school groups to make a video of 2 minutes or under on the theme Love Our Bees. So they could talk about reasons why to love bees or things you can do to help bees. So that's one of the big things. And then we're also doing the Council Bee Friendly Garden Challenge, where we get in touch with councils and offer them seeds for them to either plant in civic spaces or to give to community groups to plant as a way of making public spaces more full of bee-friendly planting. So as part of that as well, we encourage them to put displays up in their community centres or libraries about Be Aware Month, and we provide them with some materials for that. So yeah, we've had a really good response from the councils this year. They're really into it and wanting to do lots of things to promote it, so that's really cool. And we've got a couple of new things for kids this year. We're going to do bee mails. So during September, before September, kids can sign up, or their parents can sign up, and for a weekly e-newsletter. So a bee mails that will have facts and tips for helping bees and games and quizzes and little competitions. So just something to give kids a little bit more information about bees. And for the schools, we also produce an activity book that they can download from our website and use, and it's also available for people who are going into schools to give talks if they want something to kind of take in for the kids to use. Quite a few of our beekeeping clubs do that, go into the schools to give educational talks, so it's just like an extra resource. Yeah, so the three kind of main things, like the theme is Love Our Bees, but that's pretty broad. So the main things we're asking people to do are to spray safely, so those messages around using bee-friendly sprays and spraying at times where there are no bees around, and, not when plants are in flower. So those kinds of messages. And then also encouraging people to plant bee-friendly plants in their garden to make their gardens a welcoming space for bees. And then the third thing we're encouraging people to do is to try some different New Zealand honeys. Manuka is kind of the rock star honey in New Zealand, but there's lots of others that are equally as unique to New Zealand and good and tasty that we'd like to promote a bit more, Rata and Rerawera and Kanuka and Putakawa, all those kinds of ones. So just trying to get that message out there.
Oh, you can't beat Rerawera. It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
The honey.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've got a lot of overseas listeners, so guys, get out there and buy some New Zealand honey and try it out in September. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's some. We've just on our website. We've just put up a little a page about the different honeys and some of their flavour profiles that Maureen Conker, who's one of the honey judges, helped us put together. So it's got kind of information about the different flavours. So if people don't know what kind of flavours the different, real wearer is, or kanuka. They can look on there and get an idea and see what they might match well with.
Yeah, so how can beekeepers get involved this year?
We're really happy if people are organising their own events, and we encourage people to get out there and if they want to organise a honey tasting or a tour or a talk, or schools are often really keen to hear from people, and libraries really love to host talks. Yeah, we encourage you to do that, and if you let us know that you're doing it, we can provide you with, we've got some resources that we can send through to you to use, our activity book, we've got brochures as well, and if you let us know, we can promote it through our events calendar and through our social pages as well. So, yeah, if you are doing anything, you can get in touch and let us know. But otherwise, feel free to follow what we're doing. If you are on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, you can follow along and see what we're doing and share things you like with your friends and family and help us spread the word widely. That would be great.
Oh, that's awesome. So have you got a specific website that this is all these information's on?
It's all on our Apiculture New Zealand website, so apnz.org.nz. And then on there, there's a Be Aware Month page, has everything on it, all the main things that are happening, and then there's a couple of specific pages for the schools competition and the council's Be Friendly Garden Challenge as well that people can check out.
Yeah, I'll create a short link for that, so it'll be kiwi.bz/beaware19.
Cool, thank you. And yeah, we'll be running stuff on we've got a Facebook and Instagram pages for Be Aware Month, where we'll be posting things throughout the month with the idea, that we're putting out kind of information about bees and bee facts and how people can help bees. Yeah, we're hoping that we can get the message out that way and get people, the general public, interested in bees and learning more about them.
Absolutely. So love our bees, eh?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I know that some people are really scared of bees. So I think, trying to get out those messages about, the good things that they do is a really good thing to do, because, yeah, there's no need for being frightened of bees. They're a really important part of our world. We need them.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks tonight for coming on the show. That's fantastic, Charlotte.
You're welcome.
Well, there you go. Lots going on for this year's Be Aware Month in 2019.
Yeah, absolutely. Love our bees for sure.
That's it. We do love our bees, don't we, Gary?
We do.
We do. Well, good on them. And cheers, Charlotte. And may we all be aware about bees through September.
So, Margaret, what have you been doing in the apiary?
Well, it's been very frustrating, I must say, Gary. The rain has been consistently irregular. 1 minute wet, next minute wetter.
Yeah.
Then hail, then more rain. So it's been very difficult to go into the hives, and basically we have not been able to open any of the hives yet. Every time I'm ready, the weather isn't.
Yes, it's been very on and off, isn't it? So what are your plans to get ready for spring?
Well, I'm aiming to continue the monitoring that I'm doing with our inspection boards through the mesh, aim to keep the mite numbers down. Regular treating means that we will hopefully keep knocking them back and preventing any build-up. The goal was to do assessment inspections by now, but it's not going to be possible. But we're hoping that next week the weather might change, because it's not looking too good. But temperatures are also quite cool. Generally what we would do is do an assessment at the end of a season and then start working from that. So that assessment is letting us know what's happening in the hive, and it's just the current status. And then 2 weeks later we would go back in and see what's changed, and then the changes will tell us, or me, what the girls are working on. And because really we want to know what type of brood the queen is laying, and also tell me how close the colony is in their preparations for spring.
If it's going to swarm or not?
Well, it's a bit early for that kind of thing. We wouldn't probably have any swarming effect until a bit later on. So you'd basically be looking more towards the fact of after winter you have a period where there's going to be the laying amount of brood is going to increase. And then when that increases, you're checking what type of brood is being laid as to whether it's drone or worker. And then that'll give you two things. First thing, that your queen is still healthy because she's laying both types. And also with drone brood coming on, that means that they are building up for spring.
Yeah, so what are you seeing the bees do at the moment?
Well, the girls are taking any opportunity when there's some sun, and the sun, once it's out, is quite hot. But seeing lots of pollen coming in, and we've had that through all of winter, really. And interestingly, most days they're all back in the hive around 2 to 2:30 in the afternoon, so their foraging stops pretty early, really.
Yeah, it has been getting cold in the afternoons, eh?
Yeah.
So it appears winter's arrived late, eh? Because there's been a lot of polar blasts from the South Pole. So how's that affecting your preparations?
Yeah, we've had some late snowfalls down the lower part of New Zealand, and it is making it difficult. For us up here in West Auckland, mostly we've had to rely on checking the entrance for indicators and using my inspection board. So we're trying to be not so invasive.
And what things are you looking for?
Basically things like wax waste to see if there's any robbing, which also could involve biting out front. Sick bees that could have deformed wings, which are outside or have been, are dying and going outside, and they might be on the lawn in front of the hive down, by the entrance. Yeah, any signs of dead bees. Yeah, just checking to see what they're bringing in. So generally, my thoughts are that if they're bringing in pollen, then you can probably, be confident that there is some laying going on in there. So, and because it's increased so much, then we might be getting new brood, but I'll wait.
So what's your conclusion for the start of spring? Do you think it's late?
Yeah, I do think it's late, and I think that it's because winter seems to have come late, plus this, as you said, that polar, what did you call it?
Polar blast, I think.
The polar blast, which has brought to us very cold weather and some very crispy days, that's for sure. So this means that my preparations are behind, basically. But I'm hoping that in the next fortnight we start to see an increase in evening temperatures. So I'll be keeping an eye on that with my temperature gauge and checking if that temperature changes.
Yes, indeed, because I know some people at work this weekend are going skiing, so that's the kind of weather it is.
It sure is. It's pretty cold. So snow's on the guard, so I can hear her barking. Settle down, will ya? Get in behind. Shut the gate. Okay, well, it's winter here in New Zealand, and it's still blimmin' cold, but what's happening around the world? Let's hear from our Kiwi mana roving reporters.
And this week we hear from Krobia, Indiana, Hampshire and Ontario. Okay, first up we hear from Veronica from Krobia in Poland. And Veronica is a fourth generation beekeeper who we met back in 2018 when she travelled to New Zealand. And follow her adventures on Instagram.
Hello Gary and Margaret. It's Veronica from Untitled Apiary in Krobia. Greetings from Poland. We hope you and your bees around the world are all good. Some updates from Poland. It's mid-August now, and we finished the harvesting season almost a month ago. It's horrific, isn't it? The reason, well, we've had super dry summer. No spring in between the seasons, and at that time, bees were crazy with swarming. The situation required much more work of beekeepers, so that was a very, very busy spring. It lasted till pretty long time, no rain and super hot. Around mid-July, we've had our last honey harvesting, and that was linden. What we noticed, all our honeys were darker, mixed with honeydew. Right after, the weather was still unchangeable, still hot. And we started to feed our bees because there was actually no nectar around. They were bringing much more bee pollen, which was good, but still. Our girls are all good now, and what we need to focus at that moment is to be sure that they have food and water is super important in this dry weather. And, well, another issue will be the varroa issue. After last checking, there was not that much, happily. However, hive from the hive differs much. So we start treatment against varroa, and it has to be all finished by mid-September. And that's pretty much, that's what we will do before winter to prepare them for the winter season. And the good news as well, it started raining. Until next time, all the best.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's been a dry summer. It's kind of like similar conditions in England, eh?
Yeah, it appears to be quite a bad thing, and the fact that after extractions they need to feed them, it's very scary when it gets to this stage, doesn't it?
Yes, and later on we have a story from Russia, which is not that far away from Poland, isn't it? So some more shocking news.
Okay, so next up is John and Jenny from Tulip Tree Adopt-A-Bee in Indiana from the United States of America.
Check them out at tuliptreehoney.com. And thanks, guys, for supporting Kiwi Mana. Let's hear what John and Jenny have got to say.
Absolutely, Gary.
Hello, Gary and Margaret. This is John.
And Jeannie, checking in from Tulip Tree Adopt-A-Bee in northern Indiana, USA.
It's been several weeks since our last roving report. Sorry to disappear, but for the longest time there just wasn't anything to report.
You know that saying, April showers bring May flowers? Well, we had rain showers all through April, and May, and June.
It was crazy. It was cold and wet all the time. Farmers were delayed getting out in their fields to plant their crops. It was so bad that some areas across the state line in Ohio were declared disaster areas.
Our queens struggled too. We tried making splits, and several failed as our new queens had difficulty getting out on their mating flight.
With all the rain, we just couldn't inspect our hives as we would have liked. We treated for mites with formic acid strips when we could, and we put on honey supers and just hoped for the best.
Well, it all turned out for the good. Apparently, April showers, when followed by May showers and June showers, make a lot of flowers.
And our bees gave us a lot of honey. From our 10 colonies, we were able to safely harvest 13 medium supers of honey, with plenty left on the hives for winter feed.
In fact, we are still expecting a fall honey flow from asters, goldenrod, sunflowers, and other fall flowering plants and trees.
So after a slow start, our bees really made up for lost time.
Thank you, bees. You go, girls.
Thank you, bees. And thank you, Gary and Margaret, for your patience with us, absentee roving reporters. It's good to be back with a good report.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.
Wow, it was great to hear from John and Jenny, and in the end, it all came right, as they said, and so it's amazing how this weather is affecting it. That rain that they had is probably over our place now.
Yes, and there's been lots to report, you guys, because didn't you guys arrange a wedding? I think
yes, you've been busy.
I think just one of their sons got married, so it's a very busy time.
Busy time, lots of new adventures, and yeah, but the bees were waiting.
Yep, and we were waiting too, but that's okay, guys.
And we missed you, but we're glad that you're back.
Yep, and we appreciate your report. Now we're going to move north to Ontario in Canada. And Yolanda is from Kingston in Ontario and keeps bees in the very cold winters. And she's got new bees last spring, so let's hear how she's getting on with them. And you can also check out Yoli Bear's Beekeeping Journal on the podcasting app of your choice. What's Yoli up to?
Hi everyone, it's Yoli Bear again for another Roving Report. I am reporting from Ontario, Canada. It's Kingston is the city. I'm near Kingston. I'm actually in central Frontenac. So today is 19 degrees Celsius. Google says it's about 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And the weather is cloudy. So far, summer has been great with warm, sunny days, but today is just the exception. One day out of many that it's a little bit rainy, a little bit cloudy, and the showers are what I would call on and off. So maybe every 10 minutes or so, we get a little bit of showers. And so it's hard to do an inspection today. And today is the day I chose, so it's got to get done. So I'm waiting for a break where I'm seeing some sun and no rain, where I can go and check on my bees. But until then, I am inside building equipment. So I'm building supers and I'm building frames and just waiting, keeping my eye on the sky for a break, and I'll do my inspections then. But so far, everything's been going well. All my bees are fine. And I hope all of your bees are fine too. I hope you guys are getting outside and enjoying the summer. And for those people who are not having summer right now, I hope you're keeping very warm. Okay, I'm out. Over and out. Back to you, Gary and Margaret. I hope you guys are doing great too. Bye.
Thanks, Yoli. 19, that's still quite cold, isn't it? For New Zealanders, anyway.
Well, I mean, that's 7 degrees above, in my view, foraging temperature. So I think it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it sounds like
it sounds pretty warm. Oh, I do amuse myself.
You do. That's great. Great to hear from Yoli, and great to hear the bees are doing well there.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And it'd be interesting to see whether she's going to be taking any honey off on the next report.
Absolutely. And now we're moving over across the Atlantic to Hampshire in England, and we hear from Chris from 3 Hairs Honey. And Chris is a beekeeper and a vet, and for exceptional raw honey from rural Hampshire, check out his website at 3hairshoney.com. And thanks, Chris, for supporting Kiwi Mana.
Absolutely, Chris, and we're glad you're part of what we do, so here we go.
Hello, Gary and Margaret and Kiwi Mana friends from around the world. It's Chris Palgrave here from 3 Hairs Honey in Hampshire, in southern England. Well, would you believe it? Since we last spoke, we've actually had some really hot weather here. I know. In England, we even had a heat wave with some of the highest temperatures ever recorded in the country. On some of the hotter days, we're down to beekeeping in underwear and bee suits only, although I guess that's probably too much information.
Oh, beehive!
But don't worry, today it's cool and drizzling and we're back to being fully clothed. I was down at the hives yesterday placing on the clearer boards so that I can remove the supers, and there are a lot of drones in the air desperately trying to get back into the hives, but clearly the worker bees have decided that queen rearing is no longer on the agenda this year, and the remaining drones are surplus to requirement. Although the main summer flow is over now, the heather has started to flower in some parts of the UK. Last weekend I drove a couple of my hives out to the New Forest, which is a national park here in Hampshire, about 45 minutes away. Apparently southern England was once heavily forested, but many of the trees have been cut down, primarily for shipbuilding. But luckily for us, this area was a favourite hunting ground of one of the kings, and so it and its heather moors were protected. Because heather honey tends to form a gel and is difficult to extract, I'm just going for cut comb honey this year, and I look forward to seeing what kind of yield we get. On a slightly different note, you may be aware that as well as our single hive origin honey, I'm also involved in various educational activities and fundraising. As a result, I'm thrilled to be able to tell you that I've been nominated for a Countryside Award from the CPRE, which is the Campaign to Protect Rural England. Having got to this stage, the final decision is based on a public vote online. So if anybody has a few seconds to click on the link and nominate me, I would be most grateful for your support. Well, I think that's all the news from me for the moment. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Fantastic. That's awesome you've been nominated.
Yeah, that's fantastic, and keep up the good work there, Chris. Heather honey sounds like a song, don't you think?
Yes, it's kind of like Manuka honey where it sticks in the frames, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And if you want to vote for Chris, go to kiwi.bz/vote-Chris, and let's see if we can get Chris to win with the help of the Kiwi Mana Buzz people.
Oh, yeah. So, so great news of hearing from Veronica, John and Jenny,
Yolanda,
Yoli
Bear, and Chris.
Excellent, guys. Thanks so much. And we'd love to hear from you. Wow, such different conditions going on, and now we're getting all the rain. So, Yes, it's an interesting world we're living in, isn't it, Gary?
Absolutely. Do you want to be a roving reporter?
Yes, you do.
It would be awesome if you could help create the buzz by being part of the show, reporting in from your location while in the field. If so, could you record a quick update, 1 to 2 minutes of your local weather conditions and what people should be doing with your bees in your area, and email that to gary@kiwimana.co.nz, or there's a link there to the SpeakPipe on the show notes page.
Awesome, and we look forward to hearing from new folks as well, and those of you who didn't have time to do a report, we look forward to hearing from you next time. Cheers, guys.
Beekeeping news. News you can use. Yes, indeed, and the first story is bee flu reaches Russia, heralds major global food crisis. Do you like my radio voice?
Yes, I think you should use that more often.
Well, I was on the radio, wasn't I? I was interviewed by Karen Hay recently on the Radio New Zealand. So
that's right, you were.
Here's my 15 minutes of fame.
Absolutely, and some good questions came out of that conversation, didn't they?
Yes, indeed. And this story, mass bee deaths affect Russian bees. Beekeepers are concerned that unrestricted use of chemical spraying is the major cause. And what's a quote from the article? It quotes,
Specialists started looking into the problem, but the research will take months. However, scientists already say that bees die on a massive scale because of the use of pesticides and herbicides on agricultural fields.
Yes, indeed. It's looking like there's an issue there with chemical spraying, and over 300,000, that's 300,000 colonies have been lost. That is shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, when they say lost, I say failed.
Yeah, failed.
Murdered. Killed.
And the article recaps what CCD is, and they're saying it's happening around the world. It started happening around the world in 2006. And the scale of the problem is difficult to assess, says Russian Minister of Agriculture.
That's interesting because a lot of the CCD reference is more about the chemical side of things, isn't it? Whereas Varroa has caused hive failure.
I don't think this is like CCD, but there's a video there which actually shows the bees, and they are looking like they're dying from chemicals. Because CCD is basically that all the bees leave the hive, don't they?
Or you could say they don't come back. They just disappear, don't they? They don't. There's no bees around. When they go to check the hives, there's only the queen and a few bees left.
Yeah, which isn't the case in this situation, is it? Yeah, I think you're just trying to join these together. The journalist on this one.
Okay, so they're I think that poisoning, chemicals in the hive, slowly failing, but were there dead bees out the front of the hives? Did they have any pictures?
They did, and there's a video there, as I said, and we'll add that to the show notes. And this is coming in from summer 2019, and over 20 areas have reported mass bee loss. And they seem to think it could be to do with fipronil, which is banned in Europe, has been sprayed on flowering rapeseed crops, which is a stupid thing to do, isn't it?
Well, I think that there is some education required, Gary.
Yes, I know. And the problem in Russia, which is probably not only in Russia, it's other countries as well, that there's no warning system in place to advise beekeepers of when the farmers are spraying pesticides, which I know in some states in America they have a spray list which they automatically tell beekeepers when they're going to be spraying the crops so they can move the bees or close them in for a day or so.
Yeah, it just seems very sad that the bees are suffering, but why have they got so much of this chemical?
Well, because a lot of it's been banned in Europe, apparently, so some beekeepers are coming to the conclusion that these have been sold to Russians cheaply.
So these chemical companies are trying to offload the product?
It sounds that way to me. And there's also a quote there from Anna Brandoff, who heads the Russia's National Beekeeping Research Centre, and she says pesticides are expensive and sometimes they, the farmers, dilute them with cheap toxins and ignore application rules. So that can't be helping, can it?
God, no. So we have a video featuring Viktor Morozov from Bobrovka.
And this story, it's okay, but it's kind of goes on a bit. There's a better story, which I've got a link there in the show notes, which is kiwi.bz/146. There's a better story there about the mass bee deaths, which are affecting the bees from fipronil.
Okay.
And do we get any feedback?
Yeah, we got some feedback from Aileen Smith. She says bee flu makes it sound like a communicable disease when we all know it's pesticides. I mean, sure, the varroa mite is partially to blame, but you can't blame the varroa for disappearances of all other insect species.
No, good point, because in the article it does talk about butterflies are diminishing, like monarch butterflies have diminished the last 25 years.
Oh, yeah, I believe it. I think the thing that concerns me about this is that the governments aren't really doing the right thing, because who brings this stuff in? Do they check it when it comes through customs and stuff like that?
Well, I doubt they come through customs through Europe.
Okay, so and Stefan Zanoni says reads like fake news. Well, I thought so too when I first read the article, because I thought it doesn't sound like a flu at all.
No, it's not. It's pesticides, looks like.
Do you think that they're using the word fipronil because isn't that used on flea treatments?
It is. The reason why they're using it is because they've done some tests on the dead bees and they had fipronil in them.
So think once, think twice. Don't use flea treatments
on flowering plants.
Indeed.
Let's move on to the next story.
Yeah, let's.
Next story, leave and let die.
Yes, David, the apiarist.org, talks about folks who are deciding to consciously not treat their colonies for the Varroa destructor mite. The term pathogen was used in this article, but I aren't sure in my own mind whether this parasitic mite should be classed as a pathogen. Well, I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, I don't remember that bit, but it's, I mean, some people think varroa mite's a disease, but it's not. It's a parasite, isn't it?
That's right. It transfers the viruses. But anyway, if we go on to quote the article, what does it say, Dale?
If you follow some of the online discussions on varroa, you'll see numerous examples of amateur beekeepers choosing not to treat, so as to select for mite-resistant bees.
Over the years, we've heard lots of different ways that people are trying to deal with varroa, and this is a bit of an older thought pattern, because a lot of the people that tried it, 5 years ago, ended up with no bees.
Yes, I know, and well, this is I like this article, and I think the Apriast.org is a great blog, isn't it? Because David is a virologist, and he sort of knows his stuff, doesn't he? Anyway, talking points. Evolution's a numbers game. So what is David saying here is that if you've got one or two hives, it's not enough. You've got to have like thousands of hives if you really want to come across the golden, what do you call it? The golden goose of bees becoming resistant to mites.
Yeah, we've made some other points in there, and you've got some study there that you're...
A big part of the article is a Polish study comparison of treated versus untreated colonies over a 3-year period. And the main conclusion is you must treat, otherwise you'll lose your bees, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I won't bother reading the rest of the stuff that I've put there. Let's just move on to the next story then.
Why? Okay, What's David's main point?
I just think the things that I picked up in this is that I think you're right, Gary, that if there's no treatments done, the hives will fail, and that seems to be the result. Even though they've done this over 3 seasons, it all appears to be, if you've got, mites, even if you've treated, that your hive's going to fail. And if you have one beehive, it definitely won't work because, like you said, they'll die. And then I got a bit confused with some of the data examples shared. So, from trying to understand where that was coming from, and I just got confused. But anyway, it was good to hear that the research was taken over the 3 seasons. So it reasoned that it will take more than 3 seasons to help evolution.
Oh, it could take centuries, couldn't it?
Well, that's right. And unfortunately, if the bees keep dying, they're never going to really develop that coping mechanism.
Yeah, you can't breed from dead hives, can you?
No, and a lot of these research, from what I gathered, it was done over in countries where they have very heavy winters. So there's brood breaks and that kind of thing. And they found that most of the losses occurred in winter.
Yes, and they said there was more losses on the hives that were untreated during winter, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But even the treated hives, they had failures.
Yeah.
I think failure to treat definitely contributed to death of colonies. And the conclusion, like you said before, my conclusion also was that if you don't treat your colonies, they will die.
Yes, indeed. I think this article is really good, and there's a link there to the actual full study if you want to read it. It's not that long, is it? It's only 19 pages. But I think it's worth reading this whole article, eh?
Yeah, I just sort of think that we do get a lot of results. A lot of research that's presented to us. My conclusion from after reading all this, in my very unscientific mind, came to this conclusion, Gary, that if you don't treat your colonies, they will die. And that is proven, especially if you are, in a place where there are lots of beehives in different locations and the chance of varroa being spread is there. So we've also just established over time that unless you're in a very isolated area, it's very hard to get to be treatment-free. But in the end, it's not very successful. But, we've just got to remember that they do research in different countries that are in the Northern Hemisphere. And it's important to be aware that most of them have heavy winters with minus degrees. So the methods often involve complete brood breaks over winter. So that's where us New Zealand beekeepers, particularly those in the warmer parts of New Zealand, have brood year round. So in my view,
and Australia too, isn't it?
Yeah, and so my view is that research taken using brood breaks can't be used reliably for us Kiwi beekeepers. So if evolution requires increased hygienic behaviour, it would also require survival of colonies for this behaviour to adapt. So for us Kiwis, treating and monitoring is just ongoing.
Yeah, you could do an artificial brood break where you take the queen out and, they have a brood break, don't you? That's another method of varroa control.
Yeah, but that even hasn't proven to be very successful because the colony relies on having the queen there. And sometimes if people do that wrong, the colony is basically
lost.
So we did get some feedback on this, Gary.
What was the feedback then?
We got Philip Vercoe, and he said, and here I was hoping for an easy way to breed varroa resistance into bees. Amen. That's what we wanted.
Yeah, not. There's no easy cure, is there?
Yeah, Catherine Steeds says, very good article. Raises a lot of cost-related questions, of course.
Absolutely. Paul Jenkins, he's from near Palmerston North, isn't he? And he said, Randy Oliver had the same idea as me, and really I think it's the only ethical way to do it. Test all your colonies for mite levels regularly. Treat any high mite colonies. Don't treat the low, no mite colonies. Remove any treated ones from your breeding program. Keep doing this until you have either colonies surviving with no treatments or you have none left in your breeding program because they all needed treatment. Bringing in new queens from outside your operation regularly gives you more colonies back on the potential breeding list.
Okay. I have my own views about bringing in bees from somewhere else, mainly because of the locality being very integral to how a bee behaves. But anyway, that's my view. But I think that it's the same scenario that Paul's talking about, is that you're trying to not treat unnecessarily. And I think that's a good point. And if your hives are coping better with it, then maybe less treatment. But he's saying, that you've just got to keep doing this.
Absolutely. And Joe, who's one of our roving reporters, what does he say?
He says, do I have to show how confirmation biased, inaccurate and unbalanced this piece is? Want me to start with the papers that were used or the opinions trying to pass as fact? Or maybe a list of quotes from the world's top entomologists suggesting we work away from treatments?
Fighting words here, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. And I think that, as we always have learnt over time, that Kiwi Mana likes to present,
different information.
That's right, and share what we can. And I think with beekeeping, there's so many things that can come into play when you're looking at beehives. And I think that our view is, well, this is what I do, is if a bee colony gets an opportunity to survive, then I'm going to give them that. And I'm going to give them that by doing the oxalic acid, which is proving to still create strong colonies and keep them free of varroa. And unlike some of our overseas folks, with our brood there all year round, I think that no one can get away with not monitoring hives.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, this article's got some very thought-provoking stuff, and I think what David does really well. And good news, I spoke to David today, and he's agreed to come on a future show to an interview. So if you've got any questions for David, go to kiwi.bz/146 and add them in the comments, and we will address them to David when we interview him.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what he comes back with. But, everyone's going to have an opinion, so let's. I'd like to hear Joe's stuff as well. That'd be awesome. Okay, well, thanks, Joe, Paul, Catherine, Philip, Aileen, Stefan, and, thanks for your comments and taking time to get back to us with your feedback. So awesome.
Okay, feedback from you.
So we've got one from Michelle Seidler. Oofda. What is that?
I knew you'd ask. Oofda, from the Urban Dictionary, comes from immigrants from the Scandinavian area during the early part of the 20th century. If you are surprised, you say oofda.
Oh, okay. Well, oofda. Michelle just wanted to take a quick minute to thank us both for all our hard work.
Oh. Thanks, Michelle.
Awesome. So this is her first year beekeeping, and she found our podcast a couple of months ago. So she says, for the last 2 months, I've been working through all of your podcasts and have had you in my head for many, many hours now. Well, I hope you're all right there, Michelle.
I hope you're okay, Michelle.
Yeah. Anyway, she goes on to say, I will admit I am a little sad to be ending the marathon listening and will be looking forward to the new content. I have started the Beehive Jive and then on to Beekeeper's Corner, another marathon.
Oh, Beekeeper's Corner, a major marathon.
Awesomeness. And she says, I think similar to children, it takes a village to raise a good beekeeper, and want to thank you immensely for being part of my village. Sending wishes of a warm and wonderful spring, Michelle Seidler.
Oh, that's awesome. And you can check out what Michelle's up to on thescheidlerranch.com. And
Awesome.
she's into dogs as well, so she's got to be a good person.
Oh, yeah. Anyone who likes dogs, bees, cats, horses, birds, trees, flowers, grass.
There's a lot of people.
Must be awesomeness.
Thanks, Michelle, for your support and your awesome email. Thank you. Okay, we're moving to the end of the show. Okay, who helped bring this show to you?
Thanks for listening to our show, and thanks to all our supporters who support us through the Patreon service. This week we would like to thank
Lisa Morrissey,
Sana Wynne Lewis,
Christopher Brown,
Greg Parr from Parr's Products,
Trish Stretton,
Nathan Buzzinger Beekeeping from Buzzinger Beekeeping.
Awesome. Thanks, guys, for all your support.
Okay, and are we doing a shout-out, Gary?
Shout out.
Shout out.
Huge thanks and shout out to Boris Brockman for becoming a supporter of what we do at Kiwi Mana. Thank you, Boris. That is awesome.
Awesome.
And also Super Banana shout out to Scott Wilshire from Auckland for also becoming a supporter.
And have you got
Super Banana shout out.
Banana!
And be like Boris and Scott and become a supporter as well. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Boris. Thanks, Scott. Awesome to have you on, on our journey as well with our adventures, and also for helping us create the buzz.
If you love what we do and find it useful, you can support us too. Visit kiwi.bz/banana. Yes, indeed. And the show notes are kiwi.bz/146 for this show. And you can go there and look at the articles, vote for Chris, all these cool things, eh?
That's right, and argue about research results.
Well, I think, it's good to argue, as long as it's constructive. And, the other thing is it's good to, you don't have to hate people to argue with them, do you? You can disagree without hating people. And the world needs to do that more.
The world needs love, okay? So we really like to call it, we love having a big discussion where beekeepers can connect and discuss these issues as good beekeepers do.
That's right. Okay, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us this week, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
See you guys.
Cup of tea and record another show?
Yeah, Q&A's on its way.
A month fully in September. I'll start again.
I'll do it.
In this episode, we talk about
Master Butterbee. Hey, this is my speech now, and
okay.
Stop yelling at me.
Okay, we'll start again. Are you talking about the Northern Hemisphere?
Who am I talking about?
You just said the Southern Hemisphere.
Oh,